All right, Coach Mitch, thank you for coming onto the show, my man.
Thanks for having me, William. I appreciate it. I'm excited.
Well, I'm very excited about this. I'm one of your biggest fans on Instagram and the stuff that you do. I'm a huge fan of it, and it's very similar to what I do. It's unorthodox and weird, and I am all for it.
I feel you. I think we'll probably learn about it and talk about it more, but from the outset, it looks a little bit more interesting, but there's science and information at the roots of it. So I appreciate what you do as well. I've seen a lot and I've learned a lot recently talking to Yannie, and everything you do is amazing. So keep doing it.
Thank you. Well, my first question to you is, did going to the best academic institution in the country that coined the Harkness Table method allow you to think about the game differently?
Yes. And I would say not a lot of the conversations at school were around basketball at all, but that way of learning how to think and learning how to come at things from different perspectives has been huge for me because, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of the stuff I do is non-traditional. And it's not because I'm trying to be a trendsetter or trying to go against the grain. It's because I've looked at basketball and I've also studied skill acquisition, motor learning. That's where my technical background is, sports psychology. And I realized like a lot of things don't necessarily align. And so I've been trying to take different perspectives, which is what you have to do at the Harkness Table. And for the listeners that don't know, the Harkness Table is you got 12 seats in a circle and the students are leading the class. You read some assignment, you have some homework, but you're expected to come to class and teach each other. And in order for that to work at its optimal level, you need to have very diverse perspectives. And for you as an individual, you need to try and take other people's perspectives and think at it from various angles so that you can have a productive conversation. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do with basketball is like try and get as many different perspectives in the conversation. And then eventually we're going to lead to a more optimal solution and a more logical way of training the game for efficiency. Because at the end of the day, we want to get players better faster. And that takes just questioning old methods and trying to provide informative solutions.
Before we go into all the technical stuff, give us a quick rundown. Where are you from? How did you get into basketball? And then how did you eventually end up being a coach?
I'm from New Hampshire, small town, Atkinson, New Hampshire, 7,000 people. My family, they're probably the two other best players in the state were living under my roof, my dad and my older brother, at like the similar age group, I guess. There's some good players now in New Hampshire and it's on the rise. But as far as in our local area, like that's who we competed against. It was my brother, my dad, and me, and we were just in the front yard kind of going at it. And that's to your question, like that's why I've become a basketball player. There weren't many people around. Eventually, once I got to the point where I could beat my dad in one-on-one, he stopped playing. And then my brother and I would get in too many fights so that we had to stop playing as well. And so it was like, how do I get better? I want to know how to get better. So I ended up just going online and trying to become my own trainer, essentially. Let me just shut this. Put this on Do Not Disturb. Sorry about that. So I went online and just started looking up ways of training, and I went through, and I think Pete Maravich, like that tape was kind of the first thing. Then Gannon Baker dribbling the ball, 2 balls super hard with his head shaking. Eventually got on to a few other trainers that are still doing their thing now, but it's similar to the Harkness method, like tried to take as many different perspectives. And for me, it was all about how can I put these together so I can train myself and try and become the best basketball player possible. And I think that curiosity's drove me as a player and now has driven me as a coach as well.
If you had to sum up your philosophy on how you coach and your approach to the game, you talked about skill acquisition and motor learning, and names that come up: Keith Davids, Rob Gray, all these amazing academic guys who paved the way for practitioners like you and I to be able to take those philosophies, or not even philosophies, these methods and theories, and put them into practice. what would you say in 1 minute, if you had to sum up your philosophy on skill acquisition or skill development, what would that be?
I would say I'm a tinkerer with evidence-based learning. So I take a lot of what is out there in the world of literature, and then I go into a space with players and I just play around with it. And that is my lab. That is my experimentation space. And I've been doing this for 8 years now with a bunch of different people, a bunch of different players. So as I've gone, I've gotten better and better. But the idea is you take the science, and that's kind of your foundation, and you typically get principles from that. And then with those principles, work and tinker and explore and see what works. And that's really what I do now, is I just tinker more and more. And the cool part as a coach is every single player is different. And that is such an incredibly important part of the equation, so that never once am I going to have the answer. Like, we have the foundation, but this part of the equation is new every single day. You could have the same person and they are a new part of the equation every single day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we're gonna touch upon that a little bit, because people might be wondering, what in the world are these guys talking about? So when you're looking for inspiration, where are places that you're drawing from? And especially things that may not be correlated. For example, why in the world would this guy be taping someone's mouth shut and getting them to shoot the ball, when that's exactly what I do? And if you read literature by McEwen, is his name Patrick McEwen? Patrick
Yep.
McEwen. Yep. Oxygen Advantage, but that stuff has been around for a long, long time. Where do you draw your inspiration from?
I've been super lucky to have grown up with a lot of deep thinkers in my corner. So the mouth tape example, my strength coach, my senior season at Phillips Exeter, his name is Sean Fischel. He's always looking into different little closets that not a lot of people venture into in the strength conditioning world. And he talked about mouth taping for me like probably 8 years ago. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting concept. And then we explained it, went through, talked about CO2 tolerance and how that could be a potential impact, positive impact as a basketball player. So then I started doing it in college, actually. I would tape my mouth up and do my own workouts in the gym by myself. And then I started to experience, like, hey, this is a different level of mental space as well, because I don't have any ability to talk. Now all my energy, all of my ability to refocus has to be up here. There's no verbal outlet. I can't swear. Like, I can't talk to someone else in the gym. Someone comes in the gym, they see I have tape on my mouth, they cannot interact with me. So it's just a different level of mental lock-in. And so I originally started with, all right, let's test this out for CO2 tolerance, which was rooted in my strength coach's recommendation. All right, I got those benefits. But now I take my background of psychology and it's like, oh, this is an interesting circumstance as well. Like, I need to find ways to get myself locked in. So he's been a great inspiration for me. Social media is a good way to get inspiration, just surrounding yourselves with people of interesting points. And then another person that comes to mind is Noah LaRoche, actually. And he is out in California. He's got an amazing system out there of training a lot of high-level people. He's with Russell Westbrook, Harrison Barnes, Kyrie, KD. A lot of people recognize him from social media because he's got his interns or his workers running around with sticks playing defense against those guys. Luckily for me, he grew up basically on campus at Phillips Exeter. His family house is one street over. So as a kid, I trained with him and I've been able to follow his journey. And he's been, in my mind, one of the best in the world at changing how we think about skill and how we train people to get better. And it's a lot of perception action coupling, representative practice design, and he's doing it. He's doing it at the highest level, and now he's starting to talk about it more and more on social media. So that's another guy I would say that comes to mind with inspiration. but it's just like stay curious, and if you surround yourself with interesting people and are open to conversations, it typically leads to just a constant flow of new things being sent your way, new conversations being had, and that's what I like, and that's what keeps me fresh.
In your ideal situation of training players, and I ask every single skill or any coach this, would you rather train them individually or in a small group?
Small group.
Why is that?
Small group 100% of the time. There's a special sauce, I guess, about being in a space where you're competing against other people. And that's where you're going to see somebody's true colors, when they have consequences of a missed shot, when they're having to play defense, having to go back to offense, going back and forth. In the individual work, for me, I only take individual people if we're going to work on shooting, because I really think that's the most valuable use of time. And there's a good amount of evidence suggesting like that is likely the one skill that kind of happens in isolation in basketball, and that you can work on in an individual setting. And so for that, like I say group as well, because I think it's the most fulfilling experience for the player. They're going to get the most out of it, and they're going to have the greatest ability to grow in various spaces. They're going to get better at shooting. They're going to get better at dribbling. They're going to get better at defense. They're going to have to get better at emotional regulation. It's just way more representative of the game, and I'll feel more confident that they're getting better in what they need to go back on the court. Now, if it's more of a psychological thing, or we're working on some internal battles with that individual, then there's value in the individual training. Absolutely. But if I had to pick one or the other, I'm going group every single time. Just a better energy and better for the players.
What does shooting form mean to you? When you just hear that word, what does that mean to you? Is there such thing as a correct shooting form? But if there is not, are there certain things that we have to keep in mind that may stay constant no matter who's shooting the ball?
I think right now, one of the biggest things that's missing from the conversation is the goal of shooting is to put the round ball into the metal ring. Like, that is the goal. And I think a lot of people are working off of mental models of what are the correct forms or fundamentals with shooting, and losing the bigger picture of we're trying to help this individual take this ball and throw it into the metal ring more consistently in a variety of environments. And environments, I mean different game situations. So when you talk about shooting form, one, every body is different. So it's a little bit silly to me to think that we should take a person with a body type like Steph Curry and teach them the exact same shooting form, or take a person like Steph Curry and teach them Steph Curry's form, and then take a person like Robert Williams for the Celtics and teach him Steph Curry's form. Like they're different. They're different bodies. They're going to find different ways of shooting the ball optimally. So I don't think we should necessarily find one certain optimal shooting form. I don't think that exists. What I do think the greatest shooters do, they all have an ability to repeat the external. And what I mean by that is they have the ability to take the ball and put it through the hoop, typically at a similar launch angle, rotation speed. Like, there is some variability, but in general, they have an ability to put the ball in the hoop more consistently in a variety of situations. And so with that, if that is the goal, if we're trying to get more towards that expert level of shooting, we should build our training around that. And I would say focus less on the form and focus more on the environment, and let the organisms self-organize within that environment. And they're going to start to find a solution that works for them best. So that's my take on shooting form. A little bit more complicated than what most people say, but it's all rooted in the fact, mostly in the psychology of like, I mean, more than psychology, but also a big point is we don't want to get a shooter in their own head on their form. And I see so many jump shots totally destroyed from coaches cueing players to do things or to think about their form from an internal perspective. Like,
Yep,
do this with your
absolutely.
wrist, keep your elbow here, your feet should be squared, pointing this direction, this direction. When in reality, like, the game is way too complicated and humans aren't designed to move that way. We move best when we're not thinking consciously, and that's
Right.
just fact.
Yep. Fully. I I respect you a tremendous amount, and so I wanted to get your opinion on this because this is something that I believe in. When it comes to shooting form, I agree with everything that you're saying. The only thing that I would add to that is I want to make sure that the player is working with physics. So they're working with inertia, they're working with momentum, they're working with all gravity, ground reaction force, all these kind of things that will help them and assist them in order to be, let's just call it a more consistent shooter, right? And that's the one thing that I really check on. I mean, for me, I don't care if you're shooting like this. If you're making every shot in a game, then I'm not gonna touch that, right? Because it doesn't look orthodox. And it's interesting that a lot of people still feel like there is this form that needs to be worked on when in history Larry Bird shoots very differently from Steph Curry. Steph Curry shoots very differently from Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson shoots a little bit differently from Peja Stojakovic. I mean, like there's example after example of someone told me one time that your shot is like your signature, right? It's no one can fully repeat your form, right? It might look a
I like
little bit
that.
like it, but at the same time, that's your signature, right? And when you talk about, so for what Mitch is talking about, for anybody who doesn't know, there's basically a triad or a triangle if you're trying to manipulate something or tweak something, where you can tweak the task, the environment, or the organism, right? And so Mitch did a really good job of talking about how in some cases he would tweak both of them at the same time, which is, in my opinion, a lot more effective. Mitch, do you see a lot of the times shots are missed because the player is making the wrong decision? And maybe, just maybe, in that situation, it should not have been a shot, but it may be a drive or a pass.
Yes. And that is, I think, one of the missing pieces for a lot of coaches and a lot of players, especially when it comes to things like shooting percentage. And people will typically look at a shooting percentage and just automatic assumption is if they have a low shooting percentage, there's something wrong with their shot, which is not necessarily the case. It could be a decision-making issue. If you're just taking really low quality shots, you're going to make a lower percentage of them. If we can improve your ability to take open threes or whatever is considered a good shot for you and a good shot for the team, that's a huge portion. And I think on top of that, we need to change the conversation on what the skill of shooting is. Because in a game, there is very few times you have a shot where your decision is made up. And the very few times would be end of shot clock, end of time. You know you have to shoot it, and so you just launch it. It doesn't matter what's going around you. You have to shoot it because the time is going out. Aside from those situations, every single shot is preceded by a decision. And we can't separate the two. The decision is a part of the skill of shooting. And in the shooting space, in the shooting conversation, 99% of the time we talk about shooting in ways where it's predetermined. Like in your shooting workout, you're going to shoot this shot, then shoot that shot, then shoot that shot. There's never a decision of like, is this a good shot? And that requires people to be around and situations to be set up. So I get it. It's a lot more, and it takes a more skillful guide or a more skillful coach to set that up. And you need groups. But in many cases, that's what's missing for players is they have a decent mechanical shot that can be repeated the external, that repeats the external in a variety of situations. They just don't have the ability to decide what's a good shot, what's a bad shot, when is it my turn to shoot. And that's the missing link for a lot of shooting work, in my opinion.
When you're talking about working in small groups, you're obviously eliminating a very big part, which is volume. If someone was to say to you, "But Mitch, I don't feel like I'm getting up enough shots. My confidence is a little shot right now because I really think I just need to be shooting the ball." What would you say to that player?
Yeah. Realistically, if I'm working with players in groups, maximum, we're probably going to see each other 4 times a week.
Mm,
What are you doing in your other time? We're going to be on court for an hour 15, 4 times a week. And I understand this perspective. What I'm about to say is a very US perspective. But if you want to, you can get access to a very nice facility without an issue. Like 99% of people can find court space, can get shots up at crazy volumes if you want to, if you're really driven to do that. In other countries, it might not be possible. Like when I played professionally in Colombia, it just wasn't possible to get gym space or a nice court. And I understand that. But if we're talking in the US here, what are you doing with your other time? If you are really dedicated and want to become a better basketball player, get your high volume psychological momentum shooting work when you're not here with me, because the reality is you don't have the resources to get a group of this quality. That's the major value that I'm bringing and giving you some situational knowledge and skills that are going to be useful in game. If you need work on your confidence, or you're a person that needs to get those reps, all right, come 30 minutes before the workout. We might end with a minute of straight shooting, and you might have to try and make 10 in a row. Like we're going to get a little bit if I see that the confidence is super low. But there are ways that the individual has to go around that, and that individuals need to understand that a trainer isn't going to be the person to get you to your goal. It's you. It's your journey. And you need to take responsibility for that. Understand what you need. Go get it. Because the reality is in the US, if you want to go get it, you can.
I always say that as coaches, and I like your Instagram, you don't even say coach, you say basketball teacher, that we're just a guide, right? We're just a guide to show you what we believe is the best path for you. But believe it or not, you are still going to have to walk down that path, right? Like at the end of the day, right? If you're going on vacation and you're with a tour guide, and the tour guide is taking you to some place where you might think is a little bit like questionable, like at the end of the day, it's your decision to go down that path. Now, what I'm trying to say is all players need to take responsibility for those things and put in the extra work when they don't see their coach, right? Because Mitch is talking about you are paying us to do what you cannot do, all right? Or you wouldn't need us, right? To just stand under the basket and pass you the ball. You don't need that, right? So putting situations together, using our knowledge of skill acquisition and repetition without repetition. These are all things. These are why people come to us, which leads me to my next question. So you work with a lot of high-level players at the highest level of the game, at least in the United States. How are people responding to this when you're like and I'm not saying you do this from day one, but when you're like to an NBA player, here's this tape, and tape your mouth shut, and you look into this phone, and you're going to react to the phone. What do they have to say about maybe not that particular drill, but the whole concept?
Absolutely. Relationship building is a huge piece of it. And I spend a good majority of those early workouts, like we need to know each other. A lot of people will come to workouts and they have a feeling like they know what I do, and they might, even if they do know what I do. A huge part of the value is my presence in the space, right. And it's our interaction when we're there together. And it goes the same way. I might think I know who you are, and you come into the space, and like we need to understand who we are, and what we are together as well. So that piece is critical to me. Is we need to build trust, build a relationship there. And a lot of the beginning workouts, if I'm working with someone of the highest level, NBA level type player, is meet them where they're at. Like if I'm working with an NBA level player right now and that's the first time we meet, they've already done some good stuff, right? Like they're in the NBA. So to say like they need to do exactly what I'm going to say is ridiculous. Like we're going to co-create an environment. I'm going to see what they need. What are they working on? What type of things did they like to do? And then maybe by the third, fourth workout, they might ask me a question. And it's like, hey, why do you put mouth tape on? And then I'll give an explanation. We'll talk about it. Hey, this is why I sleep with mouth tape, or this is why I mouth tape during my workouts. And it's because I get better recovery. It's because I get greater CO2 tolerance, blah, 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 blah. But they came to me with that question. I give back an answer, and then like, oh, interesting. Like, hey, can I try that out? Yeah, absolutely. I'll get you a pack. And that's the type of relationship building that I think is so critical, and why it's one of the things that I've realized social media, like sharing things on social media, so many people can take it and copy it. I really don't care, but you need to understand the relationship piece is more critical than the drill. And that's the value is understanding the person, the people, and what is necessary in that moment. And that is what makes a good guide or a good coach or a good teacher, is understanding the situational aspects and how to navigate the ship through that in that exact moment.
Because the person still has to buy into what you're doing, right? In order for you to have a good, that's the number one piece. And this is not talked about enough, and it probably never will be, because people want to see the coolest drill, or they want to see a set or something like that. But very rarely do people talk about things like internal, external cueing, feedback, relationships, buy-in, all that kind of stuff, right? But this is the most important stuff. You can't get this stuff down, you don't work with that person anymore, right? Because they're like, I'm not working with this guy. Like this guy's an asshole, or this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, right? And so that being able to say, meet your person where they're at to start, doing your research. Who has he worked with before? Maybe even talking to the team, the current team and assistant coach, someone, hey, who does he work with? Who is a trainer at your team? And let me call him real quick to see what his philosophy is, whether it's similar or not, right? All this stuff that you're saying, critical. Real quick, the last basketball question that I have for you is, this is kind of selfish because I want to learn about this, but I hear that you're doing a lot of the stuff on vision. Okay. And that's something that I've been looking into for years and years. I would love to hear how you're incorporating that into your workouts, and just what is the overall consensus and philosophy. Tell me about how you're incorporating vision training into basketball.
Yeah, this has been something I've been experimenting with a lot recently. And again, like, got some information in the literature, but it's not super specific towards basketball. So it's like there's evidence, but we don't know how to apply it. So it's something to be interested in, something to tinker with. And I'm lucky that I've got a lot of players that I know now well that are totally up for trying whatever. So we get to explore with a lot of vision things. It started from a differential learning standpoint of, hey, let's do some shooting, but we're going to close one eye. All right, close your left eye, close your right eye. We'll see which eye is your dominant eye, and just play around with that. So that was kind of a fun intro. But then you see a lot of these players and you see a lot of the shooters, and the eyes are typically one thing you can look at and see, oh, that guy's locked in. And so something I'd been talking about with some of my players was, when you see a person and they're daydreaming, their eyes are totally informationless. Like they're like dead in the eyes is kind of the saying you would say. when you see Kobe Bryant, when he's in the zone, he's got killer eyes. Like his eyes are on fire. The rest of his body is just relaxed, but you can tell like he's locked in. And so a cue that I started working with guys was like fire eyes. And when I see they're starting to slow down their mechanics, I would say like turn up the intensity in your eyes. And like locking in on the rim, that vision, intense vision, seemed to calm down the rest of their body. So that was something, again, that was like, oh, this is an interesting thing to keep looking at. And then in a workout with Duncan Robinson, we were doing a drill where you're in the corner, but you're facing away from the hoop. And when I say go, I'm going to give you a pretty bad pass, and then you're going to have to square up, find rim, and shoot. And so we had some pretty.
He has to catch the ball. He's facing like the sideline. Is that right? He's in the corner.
Yeah.
Facing the sideline. When you say, does he have the ball, or you're saying?
So I say go. I've got the ball. He's going to do a 180 turn, find the ball, find rim, and shoot. And if he doesn't get it off quick enough, I'm going to block him.
Okay.
I've got a noodle with me or something to extend the length. And when we went back and looked at a lot of the footage, his body super relaxed under the chaos. His eyes were so intense. And so we kept seeing more and more instances of like the vision and the quiet eyes, I guess the technical term for this. And that's a concept used in like shooting, like not basketball shooting, like gun shooting, the clay discs, is like tracking that disc and seeing it and performing the action. And so we just kind of like, there were more and more things, and eyes seem to be not talked about in the training aspect. So then started testing out some new technologies. Synaptech, I think I'm saying that correct, are these glasses that like strobe glasses that occlude, they shut off the vision every once in a while. So started doing that with like Joey Baker from Duke in Michigan. We implemented that into some of his warm-ups, and it just shuts off basically half of the visual information because it shuts off every few milliseconds. And so he's having to chunk information with less information. So the idea is like elite athletes have the ability to process information visually. They can see something and they'll be able to chunk it together based off of what they've seen and understand like this is probably the best solution for the future. And so they can start to perceive and act more efficiently. And so what we're doing is we're shutting off half the information. So you have to be really attuned to what information you can see when you can see it, and then make your actions accordingly. So it's still stuff we're playing around with quite a bit, but there's a cool, I think, growth in technology in the area and growth in awareness in vision training, and something we're going to keep doing, because at the end of the day, like, you got to be able to see the court to make decisions. That is the primary way we're receiving information in basketball.
You know, something like I'm obsessed with vision as well. Something that was told to me by Mike McKay from Canada Basketball is this was probably the most eye-opening concept when he told me years and years ago of PVAD. So PVAD stands for your positioning affects your vision, which affects your anticipation, which affects your decision making. So one precedes the other. And when you think about it, position really does affect your vision, because if I catch the ball, like if I'm getting a rebound and I catch it facing the baseline rather than facing like squared to the sideline, well, my vision is totally different, right? My vision is totally different. But then it was the next part which really got me, which was anticipation. And for the most part, not all my drills, but a lot of my drills nowadays have to be contextual. And what I mean by that is when we're training, especially offense, we have to make it very, very clear what the spacing is like, what kind of defense they're playing against. Because just in my opinion, a lot of coaches disagree with that. But if you're playing a zone, your mindset is different from when you're playing against a man-to-man defense. If you're coming off a ball screen and they're hedging rather than dropped, it's also going to be a very different look. But the reason I'm telling you this is if we're able to put our players in situations where they can anticipate, all of a sudden, our vision becomes much better. And so the reason I'm saying this is and this is pretty embarrassing, but I was playing one of my friend's daughter in a video game, and she was killing me every single time. I couldn't get a win, right? And I felt bad about myself. It's okay. It's okay. I'm a secure guy. No, but then then I realized that she had been playing this game for years, and this is the first day I've been playing it. And so if I'm coming off, I'm just going to make a shakes pick and roll where there's a 2 side on the front side and 1 side on the back side, and I'm coming off towards the middle, and I know that there might be a hammer action going on the weak side, and the guy behind me is lifting. Well, then I can make that read a little bit easier because I know what's going on, right? And I can either score first, I can hit that roller, I can hit the lift guy, I can hit the person in the corner. But the reason I'm telling you all this is because just like stress, vision is situational dependent. Do you think that's true? Like vision is very, very much task related in that. And I do believe that there is a part of vision because I'm very, very weird when I work with vision. I have like an eye mask. What do you call it? Eye patch. Turn off the lights.
Yeah, Yannie talked to me about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's seen a lot. And I also think that a big part of shooting is kinesthetic. So it's your awareness of the court, and it's not so much vision, which vision is absolutely important, but you being aware of where is the rim right now, right? Depending on what the task I'm doing, and then being able to execute in a split second. And then in that split second, do you have those fire eyes? Do you kind of understand what I'm trying to say?
100%. I think that's awesome. I'd love to come watch you doing some of that work as well, because I think it's so true. And the funny story on this. So I went to undergrad out in California. I'm from New Hampshire. So during holidays, it's quite a flight back. And I was flying home for Christmas break, and funny enough, just got sat next to a sports psychologist, a teacher from one of the state schools in California. Didn't know at the time, but turns out she is absolutely legendary in sports psychology for softball. I forget her name, but I'll get it to you and maybe put it in the show notes. But we started talking because she was grading her students' tests, and I started looking over, and it was like looking at attention. So external attention, internal, broad, narrow. I was like, oh, pretty interesting. And I told her my background as point guard at the time, and she was like, oh, like, how often do you train your vision? And I was like, not intentionally, like barely ever. So she said, all right, before your next game, I want you to stand at half court during warm-ups. First, I want you to be broad and see the full court. So think transition. We want to have soft eyes, see the court. And then split second, find rim. And that tunnel vision where you kind of block everything else out. And just go back and forth from those two things. And I think to your point, like people think about vision, we just think like, oh, you see things. But I don't think we realize the variety of ways we see things. We see things in our peripherals. We can focus in on a certain point. We can throw people off looking one way, but we're really having our attention somewhere else. And those situational, small-sided games are going to help players develop the ability to go from that broad, where we're taking in a lot of information, understanding space, understanding our teammates, we know where we are in space, to then that narrow, like we know where everything is and where it's going to be, but I need to focus in on that rim and execute my shot. And I think that back and forth from broad, narrow to, the back and forth from broad and soft eyes to narrow and very specific external attention on the rim is a huge thing for shooters, especially, to work on a lot.
Dude, I'm stealing that warm up. So let me just make sure I got this correct first. So you're standing at half court, you're looking, let's say, from corner to corner, something like that, soft eyes, right? And then all of a sudden you're narrowing to the rim. So I'm looking, I'm seeing that corner to corner, and everything's kind of blurry. The clarity is not great. And all of a sudden I look at the rim. So I'm just standing there doing that. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. I would do it doing 2-ball dribbling or like whatever thing, just to like wake up my mind a little bit.
I love that. Yeah, I love, Mitch. This is the thing I love about you, is you combine things so well, right? Like, who wants to do stationary, like like, come on, man. But when you have an external thing that you're focused on, I'm taking that. That's really, really good. Okay. Well, as I mentioned to you before, the way that the show is structured is that I want to make sure, because I love the space so much. And for the most part, the coaches that I've interacted with, we're all givers. We want to see people succeed. We feel a sense of fulfillment and a dopamine hit when we watch our work become a success or come to fruition when other people succeed. But one of the things that I feel like our space as a whole, and a lot of this is in the basketball coaching community as well as the player community, is that we sacrifice ourselves a lot. Okay, and that's every coach, including yourself. You know what I'm talking about. And I feel like one of the topics that is very, very not talked about at all is the financial part and the business part. And so I wanted to dive in that with you, Mitch. And so currently you're currently a business owner, is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And so how many staff do you have working with you?
So currently I have 0, but we
Okay.
just wrapped up our academy,
Yeah.
which in that case, we had a full-time strength and conditioning coach, and then I hired on another basketball coach to help me out with that. We had
Cool.
40 kids in the gym every single night.
Have you ever worked a 9-to-5 job before?
I have never.
Okay. Okay.
Aside from internships, so part-time positions. So I was lucky to go to Claremont McKenna College for my undergraduate degree, studied economics and psychology, and I was a part of the Robert A. Scholar program. And a part of that program is you get very early career advice, and it's very common that you have internships in your summers off.
Mm-hmm.
So my sophomore going into junior summer, I worked on Wall Street as a 9-to-5 for 8 weeks. And then I came back from that summer, went to my career counselor, and I was like, hey,
loved it.
This was like, mind you, they're telling me like, hey, like this is an amazing opportunity, great internship. Everybody at school is like, how'd you get that? And I came back, I was like, I hated that. Like, it was horrible. Like I couldn't get in the gym. Like I was sitting down. I eventually got a standing desk, and I was like, but it just like I was so bored the whole time. And so I was like, you know what? Like I'm just gonna go all into basketball. And my career counselor's like, well, like I don't know, like you're doing so well in school, like you could definitely make a ton of money with a good job. Like why don't you try it one more time? Like maybe it was just the wrong place. And I was like, listen, if there's one company I'm going to go to, like I will work at Nike, but that's probably the only company I would ever work for.
Yep.
And she was like, all right, like go ahead and try. Like to be honest, like the acceptance rate to the internship is 0.01. So best of luck. And I was like, well, screw you. That's the only one I'm going to go for. And for some reason they liked my cover letter and resume and in my interview. And so I got the Nike internship. And for me, I was like, oh, well, if it's the one place I said, like, I guess it's meant to be. Right. And like super prestigious. I got super lucky. Very grateful for the opportunity. Hated it. Was just the company was cool, but like the day to day, I did not enjoy the work at all. And so I was like, you know what? I know the type of person I am. I know what I'm interested in. Working a 9-to-5 is not my thing. I want to have more of an impact from the get-go. And I could do it, but that's not proving anything to me. Like I want to prove myself right, that I can run a business, that I can change the basketball world in a positive way. And if I want to do that, I want to do it on my own terms. So
for people outside, people like you and I, and in fact, I would say I am in many ways living the dream. Everything that I've asked for and ever and I'm not being arrogant in any way. What I'm trying to say is anything that I really set my mind to, I've accomplished. In terms of like, I have my own space. This is like basically a trainer's dream, right? but it doesn't mean your problems disappear, right? You just have different problems. What are currently some of the hurdles that you're facing as a business owner? Maybe on a day-to-day basis, maybe month, whatever. What is some of the hurdles that you're facing right now?
Yeah, my hurdles right now are slightly interesting because on top of being a coach, I don't talk about this much at all on my social media channel, but I'm still currently playing professional basketball.
Oh,
And not a lot of people know this, and that's intentional. I keep my Instagram page a coaching page and a training page, and I get more value out of that because if people see that I'm still playing, they tend to devalue the knowledge as a coach or as a teacher. So I've been pretty intentional on making that pivot. But with that, my biggest challenge is actually weighing or sacrificing the dream of continuing to play professionally with the business, because my business is going very well and I've got a consistent clientele in the area. I've got a pretty good space and market share in the area, and I could open up a physical facility, start getting people in there very regularly, but I could train a staff as well. But I'm leaving and going abroad for much of the year still. So this past year, I was in Colombia for 6 months, and then France for a month playing, and then I'm close to signing a deal right now in Europe for 7 months. And so that's a pretty big hurdle right now. Is I need to find ways to still produce an income off of the basketball training when I'm not physically here. And for me, most of that is the social media piece of showing or of sharing how I teach. So that's part of the reason I started sharing things on social media, was because when I was home, business was great because I had my in-person clientele. But when I was on the road, there's no income coming in from my in-person training at all. So I need to find a way to be a little bit more flexible in that sense. And that's where the online stuff started to come in.
okay. This is perfect segue. I'm sorry if I cut you off there, but this is a perfect segue of what I wanted to ask you next. You know, when I look at my friends, I'm 37 and you're probably about 10, 12 years younger than I am. It's a we are a very interesting generation where when I was a freshman in college, Facebook just came out, right? So that's where I am. Um, and my age group, a lot of us are basketball coaches, have great friends in the space, great coaches. We're very divided in terms of how we use social media, where some of
Mm.
them are more old school and are like, oh, never, ever look at you, Will. You're always on social media. And you know what? I find that funny because like these are some of my best friends. And
Yeah.
they're like, I just can't bring myself to do it. Can you talk about some of the goods and bads with being on social media as a coach?
Absolutely. I think that's a super interesting point too, from a business perspective, because the people that are a similar age to yourself are a lot of the people that people on Instagram tend to target as far as their income, because they're at a higher income earning space. And especially in the basketball world, if you're a coach at that level, those are the people a lot of people target. Some people aren't even using the platform you're marketing on, which is another business conversation to have. But using social media as a trainer, I was initially against it. Like I said, I've been at this my training business for 8 years. I've been posting. I started posting in January. And the reason I started posting was because one of my mentors, Jordan Lawley, I started talking to him about it as I was overseas. I was like, hey, like I love basketball. I've got a successful coaching business when I'm home, but like, how do I scale this thing? And he was like, hey, you gotta use social media if you want to scale. And that is the answer. Like, social media helps people scale. And in the training business, if you have a super dedicated person who's got greater financial aspirations than just owning a facility and doing well, that is a common route, especially in the private sector. And so he made a challenge to me: post 3 times a day for a year, and then you'll never have to work a traditional job in your life. So I'm in the middle of that challenge.
3 day, like on your feeds or in a story?
I post 3 reels a day.
Okay. And that worked, and you've seen good success with that?
I've gone from 1,000 followers to just over 40,000 since January. And but it's a sacrifice. Like 3 reels a day is a lot of editing. My phone's got 0 storage. I have two phones. They were just buzzing earlier, but both of them 0 storage on these. And
Yep.
I mean, but to your point, like this is a sacrifice that I'm making this year to be able to set myself up in the basketball and the coaching space to have a sustainable job. I mean, it is my job. I'm also the owner of the business, but it's my job. And so that's a huge part of the job, and it's critical for me and where I think the space is going to continue to grow. One of the downsides is a lot of people will look at you and be like, "Oh, you're an Instagram trainer." Like, you have no idea. I am so much better as an in-person trainer than I am talking on a voiceover online. Like, it's not even close. But the nature of it is 40,000 people follow that versus in my academy, I have 40 high-level players, and I probably have a clientele of over 100 people in the area. That's what makes me the most substantial income right now. But if I want to really blow it up and scale big time, it's going to have to be with both in person as the base, and then the social media can really blow things up.
What are you doing right now to make sure that you have a cushion later on in life financially? When, like, what are some of the things that you're like looking 10, 20 years down the line? What are some of the things that you're currently doing to make sure that you're comfortable later on and have a cushion?
So basic ones, building strong relationships is huge. And especially in our space, this world has so many people who want to improve at basketball. And there are a good amount of coaches, but there's still a greater demand for people who are trying to get better at basketball. So building a network of people is huge if you want to really grow in this space for the long term. Some things that are more tangible: creating an email list, getting people off of social media into a space where you have control and it's no longer the platform that is holding you, because that's a much more realistic place where you can sell to people to create additional income streams and give more quality information realistically, because Instagram and social media isn't a space where people are looking to take in information that they want to retain. It's a place for interest and to spark curiosity. So getting people off of social media is another thing. And then just financial literacy in general is huge. I was lucky that I went to a school where I studied economics, and we brought in people that talked about financial literacy. But as a trainer and as a business owner, you need to understand everything. Like, you need to understand how you do your own taxes. You need to understand retirement accounts. You need to understand all these different things, the basics of investing, the principles of compound interest. Like, and a lot of people in the basketball space, unfortunately, go to the basketball space because they were good at basketball and don't have any other skills that are income producing for them. So they become basketball trainers. And we are fortunate to come from different backgrounds with other options, but this is where our heart is. And so having that basic understanding of financial literacy is really important.
Awesome. Both first part and the second part, awesome. Really learned a lot, basketball and business wise. The last shorter part is, I want the listeners to get to know you as a person. So again, you opened up, you let us know about things that we obviously don't see, and which is really, really interesting to me, that you still play professional basketball. I think that's actually admirable, which is really cool. You have a hell of a work ethic. what is one event that may have happened to you during your childhood that led you to what you're currently doing today?
I could give you a singular event of my dad beating me in one-on-one. That would be a good answer, but it's also the repeated beatings I took in one-on-one from my dad that just drove me crazy. He never let us win, but he always let it be close. And he's a good player, and he was a college player and got even better after college. And that really just fueled a love because I always felt like I was there, I was close, and I would always lose. And just that competitive stamina that built up from doing that over years, I think has really driven me to fall in love with the game and fall in love with finding solutions to challenges.
Growing up, who was your biggest hero?
This is a cool question. So honestly, I don't think I have one person, but I take a lot from a lot of different people. Like my parents, for example, my mom, super hard worker. She's been a hard worker since she was a child and kind of forced to be a hard worker with some family situations. My dad, just his competitive nature, just finds a way to win. Like that is when I think of my dad, he's going to find a way to win. And that's something I looked up to and something I pride myself on now. Like that was a quote I used in high school basketball all the time: winners win. And that was kind of like what our teams got behind. And we're lucky to have some success there. But I would say like that, I take a lot from many different people. And I think that's a common theme in our conversation and a common theme in my life is I want to understand a little bit more of the full circle. And then I'm going to pick and choose the spots that make most sense and try and combine those.
Currently, what is your greatest fear?
Rats. Oh my gosh. I hate rats, and they've been everywhere in Boston, and it's freaking me out.
Yeah, that's pretty good. We thank God, like I haven't had to deal with one in my house. Have you?
No, and I don't want to think about it.
Okay. All right. So, Mitch, it's 20 years down, 30 years down the line, however long it is. Last really deep question is, what does a successful life look like for Coach Mitch?
If 50% of the coaches in the basketball space are on the cancel the mic and drill train, that's a success. No, I'm just kidding. No, but that might be a good thing. A successful life for me, I've been really big on relationships my whole life, and that's something my high school experience, I think, really emphasized, was the importance of relationships. So pretty simply, like if I'm surrounded by people that I genuinely enjoy being around on a daily basis, that's a successful life for me.
Awesome. Well, on a more lighthearted note, we finish all of our episodes with a rapid fire 10 questions, and then we'll let you tell everybody where they can find you because your content is the best. So I highly recommend everybody go and check out what Mitch has got going. Are you ready, Mitch? 10 questions. Rapid fire. You have about a second to answer each of them. Ready? Favorite color?
Let's do it.
Favorite color? Orange. Favorite TV show?
The Office.
Yes. Favorite NBA team?
The Celtics.
Yep. Most underrated NBA player right now?
Duncan Robinson.
Most overrated NBA player right now? Yeah, these are tough ones. I
don't want to take off a potential clientele. I have no idea.
Okay, good. Yeah, like it. Favorite food, Mitch?
Lobster.
Best place in the world to vacation?
Kennebunkport, Maine.
Okay. The best place? A place in the world where you have not visited but you really want to go to?
Hong Kong.
Biggest pet peeve.
Biting nails, when somebody bites their nails.
Okay. And then the last one would be a quote that you live by.
I shared the winners win quote, but one that if you know me and you're in the gym with me will come apparent. No pressure, no diamonds.
Love it. Mitch, where can people find out more information about you? I will plug this for Mitch. He has a very good newsletter. So I think on his Instagram link, which he will tell you about in a second, there's a link. Definitely put your email in there, and Mitch has some awesome stuff. Sorry, go ahead. Where can
No,
people
I
find
appreciate you. This has been amazing. Seriously, like really enjoyed the conversation, and your preparation is second to none. Seriously, I mean that. Best place to find me would be Instagram from the social media aspect. It's at Hoopin_Mitch, HOOPIN_MITCH. And there is where I post most of the links to my newsletter. I've got a shooting subscription that I just started through Instagram that's been receiving a lot of attention there, where I go into more of the details of shooting. But feel free to reach out on Instagram. I'm pretty strict with myself on getting to DMs, meaning that I do pay attention to them. And if it's a serious direct message, I will return at some point, likely within a week at least. So would be happy to connect with any and everyone. And if there's anyone in Hong Kong that wants to make something work as far as getting out to Hong Kong, William, you're probably the best guy. But I would love to connect with the people out there as well at some point. See what you're doing over there.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to possibly having you on again.
100%. I would anytime, like really genuinely have enjoyed this conversation. It's been my favorite podcast.
Amazing. Thank you so much.